The most challenging part of doing these podcasts is deciding what to put first, what to put in. There's so much material every day. So let's get going on this, because I think we got a lot of stuff to talk about, a lot of interesting stuff to talk about. Hi, this is Colin Flaherty. I'm the author of Don't Make the Black Kids Angry. I do this podcast, videos, books, articles, all focusing on two things. The first thing, and they're hand in hand. The first thing we focus on is the greatest lie of our generation. This black violence, crime, wildly out of proportion. And whether it's you're talking about black on young, black on old, black on gay, black on straight, black on white, black on Asian, black on Eskimo, black on Amish, black on Indian, black on kitties, puppies, turtles, goldfish. It's all wildly out of proportion. And then the second thing we talk about, again, hand in hand, is how reporters, public officials, and lots of other enablers around the country, including the perps themselves, are in such denial, deceit, and delusion about it, and pretending like black and white crime is not a thing. It's just crime. Crime has no color, Colin. Black, white, doesn't make a difference to me, Colin. Well, it makes a difference because you might not care about the color of crime, but the color of crime cares about you. Black criminality, wildly out of proportion, and tons and tons of people just cannot get their minds around it. And the latest example of that is something that happened we talked about it last podcast. A lot of people are talking about it. This guy, Jussie Smollett, this TV star out of LA and Chicago. And so anyway, you guys know the story. He was, a couple of nights ago, 17 below zero. He was supposedly this gay black actor was walking around the streets of Chicago at 2 a.m. A couple of white guys wearing Trump hats, Make America Great Again hats, threw bleach at him, put a noose around his neck, broke his rib. And on the fringes of the discussion, there are other people that are going, hey, I don't really believe that happened. Other people but most people were pretty much down with it, pretty much saying, oh, of course that happened. I believe the victim. Trump even said it. They kind of even bullied Trump into saying that this attack against Jussie Smollett was real. But why don't we consult people in Chicago? We talked a little bit about this last time. It's called the Second City Cop Blog. This is the best cop blog in America. There aren't that many of them, but this is absolutely the best one. Nobody up there quite knows who writes it, but the feeling is it's written by cops, for cops, and the civilians come in and get a lot out of it too. So why don't we read what the Second City Cop Blog has to say about our buddy, Mr. Jussie Smollett. So, here's the story. Quote, I think they're quoting somebody else here. Chicago Police Superintendent Eddie Johnson, they call the Superintendent of Police Special Ed. Chicago Police Superintendent Eddie Johnson said Friday, detectives are making gains in their investigation of a report that Empire actor Jussie Smollett was attacked by 2 men who yelled slurs and put a noose around his neck in Streeterville early this week. Quote, we are making gains in the investigation and hopefully we'll bring it to a successful resolution soon, Johnson told reporters at the Shakespeare District Police Station on the Northwest Side. He did not provide details. Quote, I don't like to comment too much on it out of respect for the victim, as well as I don't want to compromise the detective investigation. Unquote. Okay, now we get to the Chicago, the Second City Cop Blog comment on it. Well, that's just bullshit. Would you like to know what detectives are telling us? It never happened. Chicago Police Department is wasting hundreds of man-hours to solve a Grindr date gone bad. For all of you civilians out there, I think Grindr is a place where people leading alternative sexual lifestyles hook up to have intimate and anonymous encounters. Boom. The victim, they have that in quotes, the victim is refusing all forms of cooperation. His ear witness isn't cooperating. The Hollywood press is running with a non-existent narrative. The persons of interest are all but unidentifiable and left the area 20 minutes before the attack. Not to mention the anonymous witness who saw a hillbilly-looking character that not a single camera in a 1-mile radius has a picture of. And all that comes just from a couple of people who are working the case. They label this one unfucking believable. So last night, Mr. Jussie Smollett was in Los Angeles at a club called the Troubadour. He was here, I guess he's, in addition to being an actor, in addition to being an activist, he also considers himself something of a singer. So he was up there singing, doing some rhythm and blues with some dancers. And his shirt was kind of unbuttoned, Tom Jones style, down to the middle of his chest. And he was moving and grooving and shaking and baking, and didn't look like any ribs were broken. But of course, he got out there. First thing he said was how, he's going to be brave for all the other fellows who have undergone all this stuff around the country. Interestingly enough, I'm starting to see today headline accounts of his story. They're starting to use the word alleged more often. I mean, all of us that are just sitting in our homes or in our cars or wherever we are, we don't have to be on one side or another right away. I mean, we don't have to jump in and make decisions if we don't know what's going on. We don't have to sit here and say, hey, Jussie, that never happened. Or, hey, Jussie, really sorry those big bad white guys came and attacked you, man. They're always doing that all over Chicago, just like you said. But we are entitled to be in the middle and go, okay, Jussie, say a bunch of white guys are roaming the country, beating up black people and gay people just like you. Could you give us some examples of that? And until you do you mind if we stay in the middle, not believing or disbelieving, but just sitting here waiting? But we're not going to believe you until you convince us. And no, your word is not good enough by itself, is not good enough to convince us. Sorry. Especially when you look at his Twitter stream. I mean, this is one of the most vitriolic people on Twitter. That says a lot, right? He's just directing one racial piece of invective at Trump and white people after another. Nobody really notices because, well, that is just how the fellows are rolling on black Twitter these days. But I wanted to start off with this one because that kind of sets the table, right? I mean, we got a guy that a lot of people are convinced is just making up a story of black on white racial violence. And remember, his thing that got my full attention was, again, it wasn't just about him. He said it's happening all over the country all the time. White people are doing this all the time. And it's like, okay, show me that. Why didn't any of the reporters challenge him on that? Why aren't the talking heads on TV challenging him on that? Well, Colin, it happened back in 1944 with Recky Taylor. That black woman got raped. Colin, don't you remember that? 6 white women. Okay. You really got to pull the 75-year-old rape card on me right now. Really. That's the best you can do. When I ask for some examples of white on black violence, you're going to come at me with Recky Taylor. Could we do a little better than that? And the fact that that's the first thing that comes to your mind, doesn't that give us all a clue how difficult it is to find these examples of white on black violence? And doesn't the fact that on my video and on these podcasts and in my books and in my articles, doesn't the fact that our only challenge is not finding them, but limiting them to the space we have or the amount of attention we have? And of course, we all have to remember how difficult it is to find them, because when they do happen, everybody is so invested in pretending it's not a black on white thing. But why don't we go out to Las Vegas? There's a school out there called Centennial High School. It's only about 20% black. I think it's like 50% white, the rest Hispanic. And anyway, so there's a story in Centennial this week where a woman named Gabby, she looks black, but I don't know if she's black or not, the reporter, she is not, as far as I can tell, a member of the National Association of Black Journalists. Anyway, Gabby is relatively new to Vegas. She's a young reporter. She's sitting there going out to Centennial High School because on video, for days and days and days, probably longer than that, black people have been rampaging through the halls of Centennial High School, threatening, harassing, and attacking and beating white students. They do it in the bathroom, they do it in the hallway, they do it outside. And it's not just a one-on-one thing, it's a 5-on-1, 4-on-1, 6-on-1, 10-on-1. I mean, doesn't that sound like a case that, again, we don't want to contrast this with a hypothetical case. We want to contrast this with a real case. Let's contrast the story you're about to hear, the real story, with real victims, real witnesses, real video, with the fairy tale we just heard out of Chicago and Jussie Smollett.
They revealed that there's a gang of students at Centennial High that have been targeting other white students while on school property. This family hoping that by sharing their story, it'll put an end to this so-called schoolhouse gang.
Where up? Hurry up.
A student at Centennial High says a schoolhouse gang forced him to fight on camera not once, not twice, but 3 times.
The kid throws my son on the floor and is stomping him, all in the head.
Sherry, who doesn't want to be fully identified, says the school suspended her 16-year-old son last week for a fight in the bathroom. But after looking into it, she learned that the entire week he was being targeted by a gang of 15 to 20 black male students.
His good friend told me that they target white kids only because they feel that they're weak.
Sherry's son says his problem with the group started after they attacked one of his friends.
My friend got jumped by them and they took his shoes.
He shared his dismay over that attack on social media. And the next day, he says several teens from the group circled him in the locker room right before gym class.
They said, we're going to give you an option. You can go out and fight us in the hallway, or you can do it, or we can just jump you and get you right here in the locker room.
And the day after that, he says the same group made him fight again. The final video recorded in the school bathroom shows him fighting yet another member of the group.
And this is the final one? Is that one of the same students from the other videos?
No.
So these are 3 different people?
Yeah.
Angry, very angry, and helpless. He got hurt, and nobody was there to help him.
We reached out to CCSD asking if they were aware of this group of alleged bullies and what they're doing to protect students from them. They sent us a statement saying, in part, school administration and school police are aware of the matter and appropriate action will be taken. CCSD investigates every reported case of bullying and takes appropriate action.
I would like anybody that is been victimized by them to please come forward.
Now, CCSD police tell me that they have issued criminal citations to several of the students involved. That means those students will have to appear in juvenile court. Of course, CCSD encourages anyone who is being bullied or who witnesses bullying taking place to report it to a responsible adult.
And that reporter did not want to get within 1 million miles of a white parent and a white kid saying that the kids, black people, are roaming that school, beating the piss out of white kids. Not just one time, but many times, over a long period of time. Oh, it's really all about bullying. It's really all about the schoolhouse gang. That's the best you can do. With the eyes of the nation focused on Jussie Smollett in Chicago and Los Angeles, and how white people are always beating the piss out of black people for no reason whatsoever. It's happening all the time, but don't ask me to give you any examples because I got to catch a plane to go to LA so I can sing some songs at the Troubadour and repeat my little fairy tales. But we give you stories like this over and over and over from schools all around the country. Sometimes the black students they're attacking teachers, they're attacking other students. They're attacking neighbors, they're attacking principals, they're attacking security guards. Violence is a thing with the fellas in school. Capiche? And these reporters they just shrug their shoulders and look around going, what are you talking Colin, what are you talking about? White people do this too. Well, could you give me an example, saith Colin. Oh, of course, Colin. We'll get right back to you on that, Colin. Oh, darn it, Colin, where'd the time go? I gotta go wash my hair tonight. See ya. The last time we did this podcast, I actually broke a little promise to myself by saying, well, since we have a little more time on these podcasts, I probably should spend just a little more time reminding people how they can support the channel, how they can contribute to my PayPal, and how they can keep all this stuff going by using our coffee cups and t-shirts that we have at Teespring. All that stuff easy to find over at colinflaherty.com. I didn't do it. I said, okay, I'm going to do it this time. So I thought, well, maybe I can work it into something I really wanted to talk about anyway, which is, it might seem just a little bit out of our lane, but it really isn't. Any of you guys see, by the time you hear this, you may have already seen it or heard about it. The Washington Post is going to run a $5 million commercial today about the free press. They're going to give a little, Tom Hanks apparently is going to be the voice, and he's going to remind everybody of what heroes these reporters are, how they're doing all this great stuff for us, and how we can't forget that no matter what those big bad enemies of the people in the White House are trying to convince us to do. God, what a fairy tale. What an exercise in denial, deceit, and delusion. So the Washington Post is just like pretty much every other major daily newspaper in this country over the last 10 to 15 years. They have been taking it in the shorts in every way you can imagine. That company was losing money just like the New York Daily News, the Philadelphia Inquirer, the New York Times, the Los Angeles Times, the Baltimore Sun, go out to one of the Chicago papers, I think the Tribune, the Los Angeles Times, and lots more in between. And say, okay, so they're taking it in the shorts with their circulation. Okay, I get that, okay? But the weird thing about it, but it's not just that. And here's the weird thing about it. All these papers are undergoing at least one, if not a couple of ownership transfers, except for the New York Times. They almost did it. They went and found some money from a gajillionaire in Mexico, Carlos Slim. He kind of propped them up for a while and kept the doors open over there. But all these papers, they're all being like the New York Daily News. They couldn't even. That thing was basically, they were basically giving that away, just like they gave away Newsweek for $1. Remember that? And they basically had to give away the Daily News. Nobody wanted it. I mean, essentially, you say you're buying it for $1, but you're taking it over, and you also assume the debts, the pension debts, all that stuff. But that doesn't really negate what's going on inside these papers. Same with the Philadelphia Inquirer. So all these papers are taking it in the shorts, and they change ownership, and it's usually some bright billionaire who's never owned a newspaper before. Look, they come in, and the first thing he does when he gets into his new office is they sit him down and they go, hey, yeah, it's great. He has all these ideas for making changes. I mean, he bought the thing. He knows the thing went into the toilet. I mean, why keep doing the same thing over and over again if that's what got you to that position then? They sit him down and they go, oh, those are great ideas, except, of course, we have to keep independence between the ownership and the newsroom. And he looks around and everybody's going in the suits, the guys who ran the paper into the ground. He's looking at them. They're shaking their head, yes, up and down. Yeah, that's true. Can't do that. No. So all these billionaires, they basically turn the ownership of the editorial content of their papers to the same people who ran their paper into the ground every day. And here's how the meetings go. The first meeting after the ownership changes, everybody sits down and they go, boy, we've got some tough times ahead here. The money's not going to flow here forever. We're going to have to make some cutbacks. We're going to have to change the way we do business around here. Everybody's really serious, looking at each other, shaking their head. Yeah. Nobody really knowing what they're supposed to do. And that's when somebody basically sits up and goes, yeah, you know what? All that liberal stuff that got us here in the first place, all the stuff we did to drive away so many of our readers. Yeah, why don't we do that, except do it 10 times more? And everybody looks around and goes, that dude's a genius. I mean, look at all these papers. Has one of them changed? This is actually going to come back to our topic of racial violence and denial. Has one of these papers changed when they turned over? When they turned over? Look at the Washington Post. Look at it now. I haven't looked at it today. I don't look at it that much, but I do once a week. I just want to look. I just look at the homepage, and I just want to see how many articles on the homepage are blatantly, positively, no ifs, ands, or buts, anti-Trump, anti-conservative, anti-white dude. I mean, sometimes it's like 10 for 10. You know, if you're of a certain ideological bent, you're conservative. Even if you're not conservative, most of us, when we read a newspaper, we read something. I mean, we don't mind being challenged a little bit. We don't mind seeing something that might clash with our world experience. But we just want these guys not to insult our intelligence. We don't, the way to look at reporters is we don't look at them and say, you have to be objective. No, that's stupid. Nobody is objective. But we can ask reporters to be fair. That's what is missing in all these papers. And so we read the Washington Post, and it's basically the same article all over and over and over again, which is, Trump is a bad person, and because of that, we are all going to die. Conservatives are bad people, and because of that, we are all going to die. I mean, hell, the Los Angeles Times is like that. The Los Angeles Times will not even print a letter to the editor that questions the liberal orthodoxy on global warming. Ditto for Meet the Press. They announced that a few weeks ago. Chuck Todd. We're not going to have any guests on here who are unscientific about global warming. And so these papers, they've just adopted more fully all the liberal orthodoxy, which means is the more they adopt that, the further they get away from even coming close to telling the truth about our topic of black violence, black criminality, wildly out of proportion. They get further and further and further away from that. I mean, to their credit, it took the Washington Post, when they did Hands Up, Don't Shoot down in Ferguson, St. Michael Brown of Ferguson. Everybody was doing the hand on the steps of the Capitol. Hundreds of black staffers had their hands up in the air. Hands up, don't shoot. Basketball players did it. NFL players did it. It took the Washington Post almost a year to print that. And, the Washington Post printed that story every day, just like everybody else did. It took them about a year to figure out, oh, no, that was 4 Pinocchios for one big, fat, honking lie. It was interesting, and they actually included that as one of their biggest lies of the year in a compilation they did. But it's interesting. So there was all these lies, and it said, well, yeah, this guy lied and did it this way. This guy lied, did it that way. This guy lied, did it that way. But when they got to the big lie of St. Michael Brown of Ferguson, it was like there were no liars. There was a lie, but there were no liars. They basically did not have the nerve to say, oh, yeah, we led the pack on that big fat lie. It was our national reporters, just like all the other national reporters down in Ferguson, who were just taking every little bit of fantasy and propaganda and delusion and printing it as if it were fact. Yeah, we did that. We did that at all the riots. We did it at all the court hearings. We did it all everywhere. And, so they didn't do that for that. And so all of the readers like us, I mean, it's like they drove us away. They drove us away, not because, not because we're reading Breitbart or Drudge or Lucian or all these other places, but because everybody in there just decided that share of the readership was just not viable enough to cater to. They could, well, you can't find. Colin, we can't find reporters. The Washington Post hired somebody named Jennifer Rubin. She was supposed to be the conservative blogger. She was supposed to be the one, giving us the conservative point of view. Today, she would probably say, no, I was just going to report on the conservative point of view. But even that got to be too much of a struggle because she just crossed whatever she was was a couple years ago. She went way left till today. They don't even put the word conservative in her byline anymore. She's just every day. She's just picking up the cudgel for the liberals, beating conservatives as often as she can. And so that's the way newspapers are being run now. Go read Philly.com, which is the Philadelphia Inquirer. Just read the headlines. Just read the stories. Every story is the same. Trump's a bad person. We're all going to die. But here's the one story they never stopped publishing and they kept doubling down on. Black people are relentless victims of relentless white racism all the time, everywhere. That explains everything. Jussie Smollett. I mean, if the Washington Post, if the Philadelphia Inquirer, if the Chicago Trib, Los Angeles Times, if all these local news, if all the national news stories, these so-called legacy media, were doing even a half-decent job, even hinting at the truth, if they weren't such prisoners of their own denial, deceit, and delusion, would we be doing this podcast? Would you be listening to this podcast? No, you'd probably be listening to NPR or Rush or Michael Savage or somebody more traditional. But it's amazing. I mean, I thought this thing was supposed to be a business. So what kind of business plan are they following? I mean, somebody buys one of these papers and the first thing they do is, hey, let's keep actively antagonizing at least half the people who would be interested in buying our product. We don't even need those people. I mean, it's never really when you talk about newspapers and media as a business, it's never really a good idea to get too far away from the advertisers and how these things stay afloat. And all I could guess is the people running these papers have decided that for some reason conservatives and people who insist on having an interesting paper with a diversity of opinion, maybe we don't buy the same amount of stuff. Maybe we are not as easily persuaded to buy Puff Diddy's latest brand of vodka. Maybe that's their only saving grace. I don't know. Like if you spend $100 on advertising in the Washington Post and you check the same amount of audience with $100 at Breitbart, I mean, who would buy more stuff? Who would be more gullible? Who would be more open to, whatever the cool message is? Who would be more involved in the groupthink? Well, the people running these newspapers have obviously made the decision that you give a liberal a nice shiny object and you just sprinkle some adjectives on it and they're going to pick it up uncritically and say, oh yeah, I have to have that. So apparently, conservatives and other people with active minds are not as easy, not as gullible to be seduced by some of the ads. But it's just astonishing to me. These people are fabulously successful. The people who buy these papers, and the drill, of course, the first time around, when a lot of these papers are bought and sold more than once. The drill for the first time around is you go in, you buy the paper. When you buy a paper, like for example, the San Diego Union Tribune went through this. Somebody came in and bought them. And then what you do, you strip out the real estate holdings on it. So then pretty soon what you have is maybe a headquarters, and you have, the name, the so-called goodwill, and you have the printing presses, and you have the customers, and all this other stuff. But you may have already gotten your money back because you sold off all the, ancillary offices that an old newspaper like this is going to collect over a period of time. But even so, at some point, once you've stripped out the real estate, all you're left with is a bunch of rich guys with more money than common sense turning their paper over to people who basically hate their audience. People who don't think their audience is active and engaged and smart and interesting and wants to be interested in the news. Now you have an audience where basically a lot of people are just hostile to your product. That's what these newspaper publishers and national news markets are facing. I mean, that's what they just discovered in Washington this month. Did anybody see this story? It was kind of a little story, but I thought it deserved way more attention. That's why it didn't get more attention, because this speaks directly to how these newspapers are talking to their audiences now. Did you guys follow about 10 years ago, the big newspaper and media conglomerates got together, put some money up, and they started something in Washington called the Newseum, the News Museum, Newseum. And it was one of these like self-congratulatory, come into our building, come into our industry thing, so we can remind you of all the great things we've done to save Western civilization from people like you. Yeah, these newspapers are basically, that's their mission, to save civilization from the barbarians at the gate, which is us, the readers. Anyway, so they put this museum on up, and, it's like, yeah, we're heroes, heroes, heroes. People go to this museum, or people in Washington going, what? You want me to go to a museum dedicated to a bunch of creeps who are trying to tell us they're really a bunch of heroes? And the answer is, oh, yeah, Colin, that's a good idea. Yeah, that's going to be a big winner. Of course nobody went to that stupid museum. Of course nobody wants to support these arrogant narcissists. So they're closing it down and they're selling it off to Johns Hopkins, a university out of Baltimore. They're going to consolidate all their Washington, D.C. area educational facilities. I mean, but isn't that amazing? I mean, these guys are so held in such low regard by other people, but they hold themselves in such high regard. Is there a business where there's a bigger gap between the regard your customers hold you in and the regard you hold yourself in? I don't think that there is. But these guys are their lack of self-awareness is so epic, they still don't get it. So now the Washington Post is plunking down $5 million to remind us that, well, we couldn't convince you that the Newseum is a monument to the heroes, but here we're going to spend $5 million to try to tell you that these news guys really are heroes. Look, I've worked in a lot of newsrooms. They're not heroes in there. They're just working stiffs trying to make a living, okay? Some people like to elevate themselves in their own minds about their mission. But they're usually only elevated in their own minds, not in the minds of anybody else. And it's because people who read the newspaper see every day this enormous gap between what they say happened and what really happened. And what example do we have better than the stuff I've documented in my books? People forget, my books aren't just about race. My books are media books. That's what I started out writing them to be. I expose this enormous gap between what reporters said about racial violence and what was really happening. And we used video to do it. It wasn't just Colin walking around going, hey, what happened here? Hell, Colin was a bunch of white people. No, we showed what was going on. I think my favorite example, whenever I think about this gap, I always think about reporters doing stories in front of a green screen. And when you're talking a story, right? Sometimes they run film behind you. People call that the B-roll. And you're not really moderating the B-roll. That's just something to kind of a sharp, shiny object just to keep you busy while this guy tells us what just was happening. So the one I remember most is out of Milwaukee. I think I may have mentioned this on a podcast a couple weeks ago, but whatever. They were celebrating Juneteenth in Milwaukee, a big deal. I think it's June 15th or 16th up there. And, they had thousands of people. They were attacking cops and horses and parade goers. And it was a nightmare. And you see a helicopter shot of thousands of black people rampaging up the street, stopping traffic, pulling people out of traffic. All the while, this young white reporter is looking into the camera and telling us what a great celebration this Juneteenth was that day. All because, and don't worry about it if a couple of people ruined it for the rest of us. I mean, there were thousands of people rampaging through Milwaukee, and this guy's on B-roll, and this guy's going, they're ruining it for the rest of us. So people every day are experiencing the media as people with other ideas about what is really happening than our ideas. So we want to know what happened, okay? Just tell me what happened. Occasionally, I lecture to reporters. I used to do this a lot in San Diego. I lectured to reporters at the University of California, a class on research and writing techniques for reporters. And I talk to college classes once in a while. And we talk about my books, but we also talk about this larger topic of how reporters go wrong. And most of the reporters that we see, almost 100% that we see on TV now, the talking heads, a lot of ones in the print, they are really, really consumed with what is good and bad. They really, really want to tell us. Maybe they think they have to. That's the way to get their clicks going to, keep their publication or news site in business. I don't know, but they're really consumed with good and bad, and they really want to tell us right off who's good, who's bad, what's good, what's bad. But what they don't get right, which is a lot trickier than good and bad, is true and false. Just tell me what happened. Tell me true. And if there's subtleties into it, explain those too. But reporters they're not really occupied with that. Now it's just like Chuck Todd. Well, we're not going to, good and bad. We're not going to tell you about global warming anymore because I solved that problem and my name's Chuck Todd and I'm a TV reporter and I know more about science than all of you guys put together. So these papers are driving away their readers and their viewers, all because they just think they're going to report stuff that we won't notice over a period of time, how lousy of a job they do. And where does that apply more than our topic of black violence wildly out of proportion and how reporters and public officials are in such epic denial about it? This has got to be Exhibit A. And what about in that story we just heard from Las Vegas? Good Lord. Jussie Smollett's running around the country as the new Emmett Till, all a fairy tale. And white kids are being beaten in the hallways of Centennial High School by roving bands of black people, and people look at it and go, well, that's nothing, Colin. That's nothing. That's nothing. It's just some kids. It's a little bullying going on. We'll straighten it out. We'll make them do some restorative justice. Why don't we stay on the school stuff just for a couple of minutes, if only because then there's so much bad business happening in these schools, so much black violence directed at all these different groups of people in and around the schools. But the people who run the schools, they get it out. They have an out to stop talking about it. They go, well, we can't tell you what happened in here because it's all confidential. But every once in a while, the thing slips out. Like that mom was saying, yeah, my kid, there's black people roaming the hallways beating up white kids because they're weak. Every once in a while, the kids put the phone out and we see the truth. And we're going to see a couple stories here about the fellas attacking teachers. Now, if the fellas are attacking teachers, punching them, slapping them, punching them, pushing them down, kicking them, good Lord, what do you think they're doing to the rest of the damn student body?
Another student recorded the confrontation, which happened at the front of the classroom. You could see the student has moved closer. The teacher raises her voice and then the student hits her with his left hand. School officials say the student is a 16-year-old boy and the teacher is a female. The student in the video can be seen standing as she's sitting at her desk. Their heated conversation went on long enough that the teacher made a phone call to de-escalate the situation. In the video, the student moves closer, leans down, and then starts touching things on her desk. Officials are describing the assault as a slap. The video is shaky, but you can see a school safety officer already at the door to the classroom when the student tries to leave. It appears that he tried to punch that officer a couple of times. In the video, the teacher could be heard saying he slapped her.
This is the booking photo of Geronimo Harding Jr., who faces a felony first-degree assault charge in addition to others, after police say he attacked his teacher at Lock Raven High School in Baltimore County. Police released new details about the violent encounter.
This student was having a conversation with a teacher. The student got upset during that conversation. The teacher was sitting down in a chair, and the student began to punch the teacher in the face. He knocked him right out of the chair and onto the floor and continued to punch him. Other teachers had to come in, students even came in, and the school resource officer had to respond, help break up that fight and restrain the student.
WJZ obtained video of Harding being led away from the school minutes after the attack, which left the veteran teacher with visible bruises and stitches. Harding turned 18 just 11 days before the incident. That means he's now charged as an adult. Sources say he was in the 9th grade.
Once we got a look at the injuries that the teacher sustained, they're quite serious injuries to his face, and so that caused us to go ahead and charge this student with a first-degree assault.
Court records show Harding was charged with being rogue and vagabond on his 18th birthday, a misdemeanor. Police declined to comment on any possible prior juvenile record. The teacher is recovering. We're told he did have to go to the hospital.
Yeah, guys, that teacher is expected to recover. Sources tell me she's in stable condition. But what happened here at Cody High School is absolutely cringeworthy. A young man attacking a woman old enough to be his grandmother. This is the aftermath of a vicious attack on a substitute teacher at Cody High School.
All of a sudden, all I hear is bang, bang, and I'm sitting there like, what happened?
I was doing my work, and I just looked up, and she was on the floor, and she was like shaking and stuff, like her head was messed up.
Keontae Nelson says it all happened around 10:30 Thursday morning in a math class. The student walked in and began punching the woman, sending her to the hospital.
He ran up on the old lady, hit her, pushed her on the ground, and hit her again. That's not something that anybody should do, especially not to the old lady.
Brandon and Tisdale and 2 other students went after the boy as he ran out of the classroom. They were outraged he attacked the woman.
My friend Keontae and my man's John, we felt offended by it because that's somebody's grandmother. So we ran out the classroom and the boys started running. We chased them down.
Detroit Public Schools Community District says the student went after the teacher because she told administrators he brought drugs to school.
There should never be an excuse to hit somebody.
As students were being dismissed Thursday around 3:15, a 14-year-old freshman at McKinley High School, according to a teacher, was acting up in the hallway because his cell phone was taken away. The teacher, who asked that we not identify him by name or face, said he called the student's mother from his classroom phone, as he had done the day before, because of the student's bad behavior.
While I was talking to the mother, she asked to speak to her son. He talked to his mother very shortly, and then handed me back the phone, started cussing at me, yelling at me. As I was going to sit back into my desk chair, he body slammed me to the ground, and I'm not sure what I landed on, but my back was severely cut open.
Teachers Union President Phil Remore showed us a picture of the teacher's injury. How are you feeling?
Not too good, very distraught. This is my career. This is what I love doing, teaching students, and you know, it's something that you'd never expect to happen in your career.
Buffalo police arrested the student at the school. He's charged with felony assault and harassment, which is a violation. Remore says the student also told the teacher,
"Come to the block, we got guns."
The teacher has been at McKinley for several years and has noticed a change.
The culture of the school has drastically changed since Principal Barton was removed from the school, and the new culture of the school and new leadership of the school is creating a culture where it's teachers feel unsafe, students feel unsafe.
This is one of the first schools that we have ever had that the teachers actually took a vote of no confidence because of what was going on in that school.
Remore says the district has not done anything about the current principal in place, and he says something must change.
Okay, so these are 3 recent stories just pulled out of the news. The fellas attacking teachers. Now here's the cherry on the top of the sundae here. One of the stories we just heard, and it doesn't really even matter, but it was the last one we heard at McKinley High School, where the student was attacking a teacher. The parents got together And they decided that the black parents got together and they decided that their fellow was not the one attacking the teacher. No, they decided that their fellow was the victim of an attack from the white teacher who didn't know how to handle what happens when you make a black kid angry.
Well, we've brought you a few reports over the past 2 weeks about discipline and behavior problems at McKinley High School.
Now, a district parent group today says that we and others have portrayed the school unfairly, but it doesn't negate the fact that a freshman student was arrested for assaulting a teacher, and neighbors living near the school, they are fed up.
2 on Your Side's Claudine Ewing is here to tell us what a parent group had to say this morning. Claudine.
Scott and Mary Alice, a handful of members from the District Parent Coordinating Council held a press conference outside of McKinley High School today. They wanted to refute claims that the school has a disciplinary problem regarding the student body regarding that student who slammed a teacher. Here's what the parent group had to say.
The adult in the situation was the one who acted inappropriately. He provoked the student. He did not follow the district policy on how to do an intervention with a child. He did not use restorative practices. He didn't do anything that would have helped de-escalate the situation.
Now, all last week, we reached out to the district and the principal of McKinley High School, but they could not discuss a personnel matter. The parents were also upset with images from neighbors that we received who have been fed up about the behavior of some of the students before and after school.
We got to do better. We can't continue to attack our boys and expect them to come up out of that and be peaceful and passive.
We don't want our black boys being attacked. We want the progress to be talked about. And more importantly, and the most important, we want to work towards solutions for our kids.
So there are the parents describing the victim as the perpetrator and the perpetrator as the victim. Listen, I'm not really a very religious person, if at all. But I went to Catholic school for 12 years, so at least I know, kind of have a general idea what's in the big good book. Just remember, there's one quote that I keep thinking of over and over every time I see one of these things where you reverse everything. And I think somewhere in there, and I think somebody could give me the exact quote, somewhere it says, kind of like one of the worst things you can do is turn bad into good and good into bad. That's what we just saw. That's what we just heard here. And the newspapers and the TV and everybody goes along with that, and they think nobody's going to notice. Yeah, some people don't notice. We notice. A good chunk of your audience notices. That's why we have nothing but scorn and contempt for you. That's why you, the people listening to this podcast right now, that's why you're seeking out other ways where, might not be produced like Meet the Press, but at least you know you're getting a straight story from somebody not afraid to tell the truth, somebody not holding back all this stuff because, well, that's not what he wants you to know about. That's not what we do here. That's why your support is so important here. And in so many ways, people support this channel. You support it by sending in stories. You support it by sharing stories. You support it when you see my Twitter, when you see my Facebook, when you see my stuff on Minds. You know what? The sharing and the liking and the commenting, that's really important on Twitter and Facebook. It's very important. That's how their computers figure out if people really want to see this stuff or not. That's called engagement. So every time you see one of my videos or something, just hit like and share or make a comment. That'll be a message to Twitter and Facebook. Throw these things around. Now, there's no doubt that Facebook and Twitter are doing things to hurt this channel, to hurt my stuff, to hurt other people that, with this kind of, who are committed to this kind of reporting. It's not okay, but it's not something we're going to complain about or throw our hands up. That's something we're going to struggle with every day. And we're going to win every day. We're going to overcome that struggle every day. That's why your support to my PayPal is important. I mean, if we were just on YouTube and YouTube let us alone, my last month on YouTube, we were at 12 million views a month. You know what? That's actually a decent, and that was growing at like 20% a month. It was going crazy how big that was. And, and so you can actually make a pretty good living if you could have a YouTube channel with 12 million views a month. And this was going up way bigger than that. but they shut it down. And so now we're back basically on the street, putting up these videos, putting up these podcasts with our little tin cup out. You guys may have seen that little character from the Dickens novel. Please, sir, I want some more. So if you want this to keep going, if you like what we're doing, throw a few coins in my cup over at paypal.me/Flaherty457. We're very grateful for that. All right, that was my little. Plus, you can go to my Teesprings and get cool coffee cups with denial, deceit, delusion on it, all that good stuff. If you go to colinflaherty.com, you can see where my merchandise is as well. All right, let's finish up with one thing here. And this is one thing that constantly kind of surprises me. I mean, everything we do here surprises me. But this surprises me because we keep talking about it, and we keep showing it, but people keep not believing it or keep repeating this stuff that's demonstrably false. And here's what I've learned. If you want to trigger one of the fellas, one of their lovely ladies, or one of their enablers who come onto your Twitter, Facebook, or maybe you work with them, if you want to trigger them, if you want to expose the vulnerability of one of their most cherished and unexamined beliefs, talk about mass shootings. It's amazing how many black people and their allies, when you talk about black criminality, the first thing they go to is, hey, Colin, what about David Roof? What about all the white people that are going around shooting people all the time everywhere, Colin? White people are all the mass shooters. What about that, Colin? Gotcha. And when you pull out the New York Times article that says mass shooters, 3/4 of the mass shooters in this country are black, they freak. And see, I don't just stop. We shouldn't just stop there, right? When I say that, it's like, oh yeah, 3/4 of the mass shooters in this country are black, including this one, and this one from yesterday, today, and the day before. Why don't we give this one a listen to from the streets of Philadelphia?
7 people were shot, 2 of them fatally, in a shooting on Chicago's South Side. It was at a lounge in the 900 block of East 75th Street. Police say the shooting happened after a fight inside the lounge that spilled outside. A 39-year-old man and a 36-year-old were both dead. Police say a suspect in a silver Ford allegedly fired those shots.
And last night up in Syracuse, one of the fellas went into a Denny's restaurant. He opened fire inside of Denny's and 4 people were shot. That's a mass shooting. 2 in one day. I think there's a mass shooting involving the fellas, 1 every day. When you say this, and when you present evidence, when you present examples, this will trigger people. You know, I know a lot of people listen to podcasts and they read my books and they follow me on Twitter and Facebook and minds.com for different reasons. But I know one of the reasons is you really like to talk to your coworkers or neighbors or people on your Facebook page and really engage with them about what is the truth and what is not. And for those people, I would think the stuff we do here is ideal for you because we give so many examples. We're just like we're the example factory around here. We just keep churning them out. And so when we say, yeah, we got mass shootings is a black thing, including these 2 last night, 1 in Philly, 1 in Syracuse, and there's probably a lot more floating around out there. There's no answer to that. And this black criminality and black dysfunction exists across a wide range of crimes and a wide range across our country. And every day we're just churning out new example. Notice we don't really focus on the numbers here too much. We do once in a while just to remind people that we know the numbers just as well. But the numbers, it's kind of like, if there's a hurricane outside, does it matter if the winds are blowing at 120 or 150 miles an hour? No, we pretty much established that there's something really bad going on outside. And if you want to go outside and measure the wind down to the mile per hour, that's fine. What we're going to do is stay in here and tell people, hey, there's a hurricane out there, and you better be ready for it. Don't overly concern yourself what the speed of the wind is. Just know it's doing a lot of damage, and if you don't protect yourself, you are going to be right in its path. And that's what these examples are, these podcasts are every day. It's like, yeah, there's something really bad going on out there. And there's way too many people who pretend it's not happening. There's way too many people who tell you it's the opposite. Like this Jussie Smollett. It's the white people hunting down black people. White people in Trump hats. They're everywhere. They're stalking black people. And then we ask for examples. Nobody has one except, well, then all we have to do is to say, what about the story out of Las Vegas where black people are stalking white people and they've been doing it for a long time? What do you think about that? No one has an answer to that. And so, are we going to change people's minds? Some, yes. Especially I think people in the middle. People, they're not, a lot of people, they do want to know what's going on. There's 20% of the people in this country, they kind of know what's happening, but they're just determined not to let in anybody inside their little bubble to break up their world. So they'll be in total denial about it, denial, deceit, and delusion. But we can get to people just a little bit at a time. Just keep chipping away, chip. Let people know how to really look at their world. So when the reporter says the teens are up to something, they know what it really means. And when the reporter goes, well, this was a random attack, they know, what that really means. We know that there's something really bad going on, and the reporters just absolutely do not want to do the most critical mission, which is connect the dots, draw patterns, let us know what's really happening. That's what we do here. So grateful to be in this with you. Thank you for all of your support. Every little bit of support makes a huge difference. Even if it does occasionally make the black kids angry. I will see you next time.